Once upon a time, there was a woman who wished to have a child. One day, she planted a magic seed given to her by a fairy. From the seed, a beautiful flower grew, and inside the flower was a tiny girl, no bigger than a thumb. The woman named her Thumbelina because she was so small. Thumbelina was happy living with the woman, but one day, something unexpected happened. One night, as Thumbelina was sleeping in her walnut shell bed, a big, ugly toad saw her through the window. The toad thought Thumbelina would make a perfect wife for her son. Without thinking, the toad took Thumbelina and carried her away to a pond. Thumbelina woke up scared and confused. She didn't want to marry the toad's son. She needed to find a way to escape. Thumbelina sat on a big green leaf, floating in the middle of the pond. She cried and called for help. Some friendly fish heard her and felt sorry for her. They chewed the stem of the leaf, and soon Thumbelina was free, floating down the stream. She was so happy, but her adventure was far from over. Where would the stream take her next? As Thumbelina floated down the stream, she met a beautiful butterfly. The butterfly flew above her and offered to help. It tied a thin piece of thread to her leaf and flew forward, pulling her along. Thumbelina was overjoyed. But suddenly, a large beetle flew down and grabbed her. The butterfly couldn't help, and Thumbelina was carried away once again. The beetle took Thumbelina to his home high up in a tree. He showed her to the other beetles, but they didn't like her. She looks strange, they said. She has no wings, and she is too small. The beetle started to feel embarrassed. He decided to let Thumbelina go, and so he left her alone in the forest. Poor Thumbelina didn't know where to go. For a long time, Thumbelina wandered through the forest. She was cold, hungry, and scared. She missed her home with the kind woman. As autumn came, it became harder for her to find food. One day, Thumbelina found a little house made by a kind field mouse. The mouse invited her inside and gave her food and warmth. Thumbelina was so grateful. Thumbelina lived happily with the field mouse for a while. The mouse told her that winter was coming and it would be cold outside. Thumbelina helped the mouse with housework and gathered food. But one day, the mouse had a visitor. It was a rich, old mole who lived underground. The mouse thought it would be a good idea for Thumbelina to marry the mole. Thumbelina lived happily with the field mouse for a while. The mouse told her that winter was coming and it would be cold outside. Thumbelina helped the mouse with housework and gathered food. But one day, the mouse had a visitor. It was a rich, old mole who lived underground. The mouse thought it would be a good idea for Thumbelina to marry the mole. Thumbelina lived happily with the field mouse for a while. The mouse told her that winter was coming and it would be cold outside. Thumbelina helped the mouse with housework and gathered food. But one day, the mouse had a visitor. It was a rich, old mole who lived underground. The mouse thought it would be a good idea for Thumbelina to marry the mole. Winter came, and Thumbelina's wedding day with the mole was getting closer. Thumbelina was very sad. She didn't want to live underground in the dark. She wanted to be free, in the sunlight, with the flowers and trees. On the day of the wedding, Thumbelina went outside to say goodbye to the sun. As she stood there, she heard a familiar sound. The swallow had returned. The swallow flew down to Thumbelina and said, "Come with me. I will take you far away from here." Thumbelina didn't think twice. She climbed onto the swallow's back, and together they flew over fields and forests, far away from the mole's tunnel. Thumbelina felt the wind in her hair and was so happy to be free again. The swallow flew with Thumbelina to a land far away, where the sun always shined and the flowers bloomed. When they arrived, the swallow set Thumbelina down in the middle of a beautiful garden. Thumbelina had never seen a place so lovely. She thanked the swallow for saving her. Then, something magical happened. A tiny prince appeared from one of the flowers. The prince was just as small as Thumbelina, and he was the king of all the flowers in the garden. When he saw Thumbelina, he fell in love with her at first sight. "Will you be my queen?" he asked her. Thumbelina had never been so happy. She agreed to marry the prince, and they had a grand wedding surrounded by flowers and sunshine. Thumbelina received a pair of beautiful wings from the prince, so she could fly from flower to flower just like him. They lived happily in the flower kingdom, with all the insects and birds as their friends. Thumbelina was finally where she belonged, surrounded by nature and beauty. She never felt small or out of place again. Meanwhile, the field mouse and the mole continued to live in their dark tunnels. They never knew what happened to Thumbelina. But Thumbelina didn't think about them anymore. She was happy in her new life with the prince. She had found a place where she belonged, and she knew she would never be lonely again. Thumbelina's story teaches us that no matter how small or different we may feel, there is always a place where we belong. She faced many challenges, but she never gave up hope. Her kindness to others, like the swallow and the bird, helped her find happiness in the end. Thumbelina's courage and kindness made her life beautiful. Every year, the flowers in the garden bloom even more brightly, thanks to Thumbelina and the prince's care. The garden became a magical place, where all creatures lived in harmony. Birds, butterflies, and bees would visit, and everyone admired the love and happiness shared by Thumbelina and the prince. One day, Thumbelina and the prince decided to travel to other lands to see more of the world. They flew together on the wings of the swallow, visiting new places and meeting new friends. Wherever they went, they brought joy and happiness. Thumbelina had found not just a home, but also a life full of adventure and love. In the end, Thumbelina learned that true happiness comes from being true to yourself and being kind to others. She found a home where she could be herself, and she helped others along the way. Her story is a reminder that even the smallest person can have a big heart, and with kindness and courage, we can all find our place in the world.